Hey everybody, just connecting everything on this end, making sure it all works, or it all syncs at least, right? So these 2 weeks I'm discussing the cultural differences between American baseball and Major League Baseball, MLB. Uh, the two eras of this professional sport are very different simply because they're run by different people. American baseball was run by Americans. The great American Albert Goodwill Spalding had a lot to do with bridging what was like the Knickerbockers and everything that came before like the 1890s. And then without A.G. Spalding, we don't know if there would have been a Babe Ruth. So everything's interconnected with each other. Then you've got World War One and the effects that World War One had on America. So I argue that the turning point for this country is World War One, given that almost 117,000 lives were lost. There were 4 million soldiers. So we know that there must have been a lot that were wounded at that point. Also, and then the final nail in the coffin was basically World War II, where several millions of lives were either lost or they were wounded. And so even in the archives, when I was looking some of this stuff up, they admit that had it not been for World War I, there would not have been a Susan B. Anthony. And then we can very much argue that with World War II, I'm not sure if baseball would have been integrated. And from my vantage point, that's not the worst thing. Africans had their Negro League, and I don't know what's wrong with that. Given that they are actively attempting to segregate themselves, I mean, go on with your bad selves, do your own thing. The thing is, you don't get to crush everything in your path. Because if Africans and Jews are attempting to claim America as their own, even though it's technically not a violent war that they're using as their tactic, we get to push back on it. And second of all, it gives us the evidence that we need when we say, oh, they're erasing America. Yeah, they are. They're trying to replace America with themselves. And so if that's the case, we get to push back on it, and we get to talk about it, and we get to take action. And obviously, there have been terrorist attacks on America. Africans are extremely violent. So while there hasn't been an all-out war, there's something happening, right? And I think I'm so glad that more people are talking about it. It's okay to be tactful about it. I mean, we know what we see, but we don't know exactly where it's going, how it's going to continue and stuff like that. This agenda, we may be able to crush the agenda before it rolls out 100%. So we keep pushing back on it. And my contribution to all of this is the perspective from American baseball history, because American baseball does represent America. It is America. It is the national pastime. when you look at the numbers and you look at the share that the NFL has, the NBA has, MLB has, they're the most, and the NFL is the most popular professional sport, ratings wise, money wise, but they're increasingly obtaining a smaller share. So they're number one out of a smaller pie. So that means that Americans are finding other stuff to do. It's very entertaining to see what the college kids are doing. Something that I realized yesterday was teenage boredom is somewhere where the people actively acting against America are attacking. And I mean, as a teenager, I was never bored. I was never a target for, hey, go protest, or hey, go be gay, or hey, go be trans, or hey, be global homo. And my friends fall into the same bucket. We were never bored. But again, once I finally end up talking about the bell curve and IQ, it's a battle, because my friends and I were never bored. We didn't get ourselves into trouble. We did stuff. We had fun. We had a really fun time going to Dodger Stadium and getting there. I mean, some of us, I think by that point, most of us were already 18, but all of us didn't have our driver's licenses. And then at that time, it's like, how do you get access to a car? And so we had a lot of fun, for sure, but we didn't get ourselves into trouble. We weren't smoking pot. We weren't doing drugs. We weren't engaging in teenage sex. So, but again, I'm a different, and even they too, my clique, and you know, there are other classes that came before us. One of them was just amazing. They had CIF caliber football team members, and they were just grown-ups. They were 18 years old, but they were grown-ups. And then the class before me, same thing. Their cheerleaders, basically as soon as football season ended, they obtained jobs. They were working. They weren't college bound, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to prove that being college bound doesn't matter. They were grown-ups. They were graduating from high school as grown-ups, as opposed to today where they're graduating out of high school as kids. And even my class, not all of us had jobs during high school. A lot of us were really busy at doing stuff at high school, but we were still grown-up-ish. So that's my lead-in for today. What you see here, what I'll be discussing this week is the cultural differences between American baseball and MLB. And obviously the cultural differences come from the fact that it's run by different groups of people. MLB is run by Jews, and they prop up Africans, and they also prop up the Dominicans. And for some reason, they prop up the Venezuelans. And I'm not 100% sure why that is. But obviously, American baseball center around Americans, whether they came from England, from Italy, from Ireland, from whether they were Scottish descendant or Dutch, Swedish, nonetheless, they were Americans. And so I'm going to go through the batting statistics, what I call the the statistics that matter as opposed to the nonsense happening amongst MLB's nerds who tell you that Mike Trout is something to write home about, or who else are they really, really into? It's Mike Trout, but the Mike Trout narrative has essentially been crushed. I believe I helped make that happen. And there are several other narratives that I will be crushing as well. And it's just the reason why I can crush them is because they have no substance behind them. They're personality ethic as opposed to character ethic. Babe Ruth, for all his faults, was character ethic. I think he was the best mix of character ethic and personality ethic. He was loved by most people, but he is the greatest American baseball player, and at the same time, he is the greatest American athlete. I saw that Tom Brady's Man in the Arena is coming out in November. I'm not sure if I will have any. I'm not sure if I will gain access to any of these streaming services in October. Probably not. I feel like I can get by with just figuring out what's going on through Twitter. Maybe I'll wait for the reviews for Tom Brady's thing and then watch it on whatever streaming service it's available on. But Tom Brady as a NFL player, he is the greatest NFL player ever. Obviously, there's others that came before him, like Joe Montana, some of the other ones, I guess. But the thing is, what sets Tom Brady apart is the fact that he's a winner. They keep telling us in a professional sport where repeat champions are not supposed to happen, or even winning as often as Tom Brady does, Tom Brady defies the odds. And apparently one of Tom Brady's goals was to become a household name, and he did accomplish that. Okay, but Babe Ruth is still the top. And I will back that forever. Had Tom Brady not gone through a drought, then maybe he could dethrone Babe Ruth. But the fact that Babe Ruth excelled at pitching and hitting sets him apart. There was this Twitter video. I guess Tom Brady's wife, after one of the Super Bowls that they lost, said something to the effect of, Tom Brady can't throw and catch. And she's 100% right. Tom Brady... it's weird because throwing the ball is offense, catching the ball is offense too. So I'm not sure exactly what she meant, but pitchers technically can control the game. Zach Greinke, for example, pitches in a manner that allows him to field the ball, right? So Mr. Gold Glover, right? Oh, let's see. I've got a crying dog. I'm going to have to pause for the crying dog, you guys. Which side is the microphone on? You're going to have to give me a second because he won't stop crying. Otherwise, I do have to pause for the dog. As soon as I get untangled. Okay. I do need to handle this. I'll be right back. All right. It's just, I mean, you guys know when you have dogs, right? You got to take care of the dog. So he was not going to stop crying. So with what Tom Brady's wife said, Tom Brady cannot throw the ball and catch it himself. I do understand that logic, but that's offense and offense, right? Could Tom Brady play defense too? Maybe, but obviously no one wants their quarterback getting pummeled. So I was saying Zach Greinke pitches in a manner that allows him to field the ball because he trusts his defense skills the most. And obviously that's not a slight at his teammates. It's just, I watched some horrible defense by the Diamondbacks that caused Greinke to lose some games. So in that sense, I'm like, heck yeah, field the fucking ball yourself, right? So in Babe Ruth's case, the fact that he could win a game with pitching and then win a game with slugging, it's, if nobody else scores, if he doesn't allow the other team to score and he hits a home run, boom, that is all Babe Ruth. And that was Babe Ruth. So Babe Ruth stands as the greatest American athlete. And that's not a slight to Tom Brady. It's just reality. And it's just the way things worked out. So we'll see how his man in the arena goes. But he accomplished his goal of becoming a household name. He very much is a household name in 2021. Household name in 2021. So let's go ahead and move into today's subtopic. And again, I'm discussing the cultural differences between American baseball and MLB, and it just comes from different leaderships. You had one of the last great Americans running American baseball. He helped bridge it from the late 1800s into the Babe Ruth era. And then from there, Babe Ruth put the New York Yankees on the map. And then you had Joe DiMaggio to continue carrying the mantle. And so that's why the Yankees are America's team in 2021. That's why New York Yankee fans expect winning. Their ownership before the Steinbrenners did such an outstanding job managing the team, helping it win. It was a culture of winning, and they did it a lot. And even someone like myself, even though I didn't grow up a Yankee fan, I mean, I'm not a Yankee fan in 2021 either per se. I love that David John is on their team on a big stage. He gets to show off who he is. And I love their history, but I understand that doesn't make me a Yankee fan, and I'm okay with that. But nonetheless, I don't want to watch mediocrity, especially because I know the mediocrity in MLB in 2021 is engineered. Some players aren't allowed to shine over others. Like, again, this stuff with Cody Bellinger is awful. Like, his life, first of all, his life is altered. That's why this thing with this little league kid who had some really great games this year for something, it's wonderful, but MLB will ruin that kid. Just the way, I mean, Cody Bellinger was that cute, smiling little leaguer too. We've all seen the adorable pictures of him, and look at what's happening to him in 2021. He got together with some MLB whore who's pregnant. I believe they're not married. So she's, I mean, we've seen how it goes for NFL players. we see how it goes for NFL players. And I mean, this could be close to the end of Cody Bellinger, and that's simply because Cody Bellinger wasn't acquired by Andrew Friedman. Thus, Andrew Friedman had no loyalty to Cody Bellinger, whereas Andrew Friedman did acquire narrative African Mookie Betts and narrative Joe Kelly. So obviously Andrew Friedman's loyalty are to the players that he acquired. And I mean, the fact that also Cody Bellinger's white, right? Super white. Same thing with Corey Seager. Andrew Friedman broke Corey Seager. Obviously, Andrew Friedman had no loyalty to Corey, therefore breaking him, forcing him into 2 surgeries. Tommy John as a shortstop is fucking insane. But again, Andrew Friedman had no loyalty to Corey Seager, so that's why that happened. So this kid in Little League, it's wonderful that he outdueled other 14-year-olds or however old they are. But MLB will ruin that kid same way they've ruined other American white players. And I will continue to prove that, stuff like that. So my theories don't come from, I'm not pulling them out of the sky. They're backed by a lot of research, a lot of stuff like this. I can make these arguments confidently because I have the information to back it up. The facts, unfortunately, sometimes you do have to let the agenda roll out. That's what I plan to do for this postseason, is not, I won't be around to comment. I'll be listening, but I won't be commenting because you've got to let the agenda roll out. You've got to let, don't interrupt your enemy, right? Let's see what MLB does this postseason, and then we can kind of go from there on that end. So here what you see, again, I'm lucky that I had started putting together the all-time professional baseball top 20 leaders in categories that matter, statistics that matter. None of this analytics nonsense that makes Mike Trout look like he's something to write home about. Statistics that matter. And statistics, again, the standard was set with the first Hall of Fame class. Otherwise, it would be a different story. But it's not. It's not a different story. So what I ended up doing when I put together, after I heard that MLB was going to make the Negro Leagues a part of, it's fine. The Negro Leagues can be a part of MLB, whatever, right? What I'm interested in continuing the tradition of is American baseball. It's different. So, so what I'm going to do is I will take a look and update these statistics without the Negro League players. I will not be integrating them into this at all. I mean, with the exception of a couple of players, I wouldn't even integrate post-integration. Obviously, Randy Johnson, Kurt Schilling, Zach Greinke, Mad Bum, David John, sure, but for the most part, everyone else is some sort of engineered bot, injuries, cheating, lots of cheating. I will present when... So I'm going to start talking about MLB and steroids, and I will continue that on throughout this week. I think there's enough content to just focus on this portion for the rest of the week. And I will be talking about steroids, and then I will be talking about the cheating going on among MLB's pitchers, namely Max Scherzer, since that's... I mean, why is there so much being pushed behind Scherzer? Because he's Jewish, right? And let me go off on this tangent really quick. So Americans are told to be fat. Americans are told to be ugly. Americans are told to be mentally ill. Americans are told to smoke your brains out, do all the drugs. But why? And who? Is it other Americans telling you to participate in this behavior? Yes, if they're Marxists. So your Marxist Americans are gone, right? They are a done cause. But who else is it? It's Jews. How do I know that? Because these raunchy movies from the last decade are all produced, acted in, written by Jews, right? Your Seth Rogens, your Sarah Silvermans, your Adam Sandlers, they're all Jewish. They're all Jewish. So, it's Jews telling Americans to be fat, ugly, slothy, gluttony, stupid, drug addicts, gambling addicts. It's not Americans telling Americans to be all those things. It's Jews. It's the Jewish population. So on the flip side of the same Jewish coin, what are they doing? So again, before the Olympics, before the pandemic, the baseball teams were qualifying for the Olympics. And apparently the Jewish team garnered a spot. And they were elated about this. So here Jews tell Americans, winning doesn't matter. Whatever. Mike Trout. But then on the flip side, when it's the Israeli team qualifying for the Olympics, they're celebrating that win. And it's true across other cultures. We saw that with the Asians and Otani. And again, it's the same thing. I don't think Americans should be ugly, fat, smoking their brains out, getting stupid. I don't. And I also think Mexicans shouldn't participate in that kind of behavior either. So you have to be careful. Who's telling you to destroy yourself? Who? It's the Jews and Marxists and the Africans and stuff like that. And so they want the American to destroy itself, right? They want the Americans to destroy themselves. What are they doing though? See, I didn't understand the Gabe Kepler thing. I mean, at first, even this whole thing, I thought what was happening in MLB with Andrew Friedman and Farhan Zaidi was just a bunch of nerds being nerds. I didn't understand the magnitude of the situation at that point. Now I do. So with the Gabe Kepler thing, I thought it was just a dork, like a gym bro tard, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, granola on steroids. Like, I mean, you guys have seen the comparison, right, between Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, where Aaron Rodgers is total bought into the California holistic granola culture, right? He looks awful. Sure, obviously he can turn it around. Anything can happen. But I didn't understand the Gabe Kepler thing in the beginning. I thought, again, he was just like some gym bro tard. Because there are several gym bro tards in 2021, right? Like your Bernie bros, right? And so now I understand what it is, given that, hey, for Americans, wins don't matter, but for the Israelis, wins matter. So Gabe Kepler continues in MLB despite the incident that happened under his watch and Andrew Friedman's watch at the minor league level that involved Alex Verdugo, Julio Urias was there, and then the guy that did get let go. So Gabe Kepler is Jewish. Gabe Kepler is all in on the BLM, and so is Yastrzemski. Gabe Kepler is among those who tell you that things have to change. Well, why would Gabe Kepler say that? Because he's not an American, he's a Jew. It's in his interest that things shift away from Americanism into Judaism, right? And so why is a degenerate like Gabe Kepler still in MLB? Well, he's Jewish. Second, Gabe Kepler is their attempt to prove that the Jew isn't a diseased weakling, right? Lou Gehrig passed away at the age of 37 because he had bad genes. I don't know if somehow Lou Gehrig had also contracted HIV-1, which causes ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. So you guys need to start understanding that crushing the American isn't just for the sake of crushing the American. Crushing the American allows other cultures like the Jews to make themselves look good because you've taken out your competition. For a long time, I also thought that Africans excelled at professional sports. I mean, Michael Jordan, right? But now I realize that Michael Jordan is the exception, not the rule. And I think Michael Jordan was also a wonderful American. I mean, technically, he's a better American than Tom Brady. Let's not forget Michael Jordan wrapped himself in the flag. He brought pride to this country, whereas Tom Brady, I don't do Instagram, but Tom Brady's Instagram posts are always posted on Twitter. So I saw Tom Brady's salute to 9/11, which I, on a personal level, appreciate. But there's some other things, and obviously I'm not here to tell Tom Brady what to do. I'm just saying that. I'm just saying, that's all. And so it would just be wonderful if, to round out Tom Brady, he was also a wonderful American. That's what I'm saying. Whereas Babe Ruth was and Michael Jordan was. So, but that's just my thing. That's my thing. Okay, so the color coding became important to show the differences in culture. It became important because it really does. You'll see it more on the pitching side than the. You'll see some stuff in both. But when it comes to banning, it's more cultural than where pitching, it's defined by the era. And so let's start with which one? Let's start with strikeouts. So for me, if you are in the top 20 in strikeouts as a batter, automatic Hall of Fame disqualification. Automatically. You were not a productive player. I don't give a shit how many home runs you hit. I don't give a shit how many RBIs you brought in. I don't give a shit. If you are in the top 20 as a batter in the strikeout category, automatic Hall of Fame disqualification. And that obviously disqualifies Derek Jeter, who struck out 1,840 times in 11,195 at-bats. So obviously Derek Jeter was never the best at anything. In addition, he was a compiler, 11,000 at-bats, almost 12,000 at-bats. And so, you know, I understand the longevity argument, Babe Ruth played 22 seasons. And Babe Ruth did not compile that many at-bats or that many strikeouts. I believe Babe Ruth ended with 1,331. I'm not sure. I have so many statistics in my head, and I have to, all I can do is repetition to solidify them in my mind and give me the confidence that I'm spitting out the correct information. And so that's why I back myself with these charts, so that if I happen to say something wrong, well, the chart is correct. So Derek Jeter, no, Derek Jeter, you are not a Hall of Famer. You are a narrative, last man standing. You had the power of the New York media behind you. But look, he's also an African. So what you see here is, let me go back to my color-coded key. I did my best. So integration, I started giving it a blue hue. And then pre-integration, I did my best to give it a golden hue. So you can gauge the differences visually. So most Ks, you see that it's mostly blue hue. So it's post-integration. So that tells me that MLB Marxists can talk up the Negro Leagues all they want, but no, Africans were not better athletes than Americans. And I realize this now. And it's not an insult to like Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was just simply the exception, not the rule. In addition, Michael Jordan overall is the exception, not the rule. How many professional athletes have gone through the NBA, but Michael Jordan is the one that we all talk about? I mean, even like the losers that attempt to criticize him, you're still talking about Michael Jordan. And look, Michael Jordan's shoes to this day hit the market, and if you go by a shoe store, an athletic shoe store, the line is around the block. I mean, Michael Jordan's cultural impact is fucking insane, man. Like, wow. And thankfully, Michael Jordan was also a wonderful American. I think it's just great who he was. I don't know. I just think that Michael Jordan is a great American, and I think that he's pushed to be an African nationalist, and he doesn't have to be that way. So, who else gets disqualified? Chris Davis is still playing, or is he the one that announced his retirement? Obviously, Hall of Fame disqualified. Fred McGriff, automatically Hall of Fame disqualified. Okay, Mike Schmidt, he's the guy that played third base, right? I don't know how I feel about him. I asked my dad if he remembered who Mike Schmidt was, and I don't think he did. So I believe his cultural impact was a little limited. I think my dad confused him with somebody else. I'm not 100% sure on Mike Schmidt, but he struck out a lot. For me, I would disqualify him automatically. I know Mad Dog had good things to say about Mike Schmidt. I will look at Mike Schmidt's career in totality and kind of go from there. But from this point of view, I wouldn't have voted him in. Curtis Granderson. I mean, look, the dude was mediocre. How many times did he strike out? In 7,236 at-bats. Over, what is that, a 16-year career? He struck out 1,916 times. Mediocrity defined. And then you've got the steroid guys. Sammy Sosa, Alex Rodriguez, Jose Canseco, Manny Ramirez struck out a ton. But again, I want to remind you that you can see the cultural difference. These strikeouts started post-integration. I know Chris Davis knocked somebody out of the top 20. I don't remember who it was, but I don't remember where Hank Aaron ended up on the strikeout category. I don't know who Adam Dunn was, 2001 through 2014. Andres Galarraga, Venezuelan, struck out a ton. And it's amazing when so I use the at-bats for context. So you've got Derek Jeter striking out a bunch in almost 12,000 at-bats. But then you've got someone like Curtis Granderson striking out even more in less at-bats. So it's very interesting to see it in that context, right? Like, but again, this is all post-integration. So it shows you the lack of quality of MLB baseball. It sucks. So you can't be surprised when you see these kinds of statistics. You cannot be surprised that the ratings are in the toilet. This is what you produce. This is what you recruit. This is what you recruit. You recruit dudes that strike out and dudes that compile. You think Americans want to watch that? No, they don't. They do not. And then obviously Reggie Jackson, 2,597 strikeouts in 9,864 at-bats. And look, I'm sure Reggie Jackson he wasn't a nice baseball player. He did shady stuff on the base pads, right? When I've watched New York Yankee games, it's always been Paul O'Neill and Michael Kay, thankfully. I don't want to listen to the stupidity that comes out of David Cohn's mouth. I don't know when Reggie Jackson calls New York Yankee games, but I haven't really had the opportunity to listen to him. But I'm sure even though he did shady stuff on the base pads, I'm sure he's not like an awful person, but from a baseball perspective, this is what he did. And is Reggie Jackson a Hall of Famer? No, he's not. He is not. Again, so Jim Thome struck out 2,548 times in 8,422 at-bats. His career spanned, what is that? 22 seasons? 22 seasons, right? So I have to look at Jim Thome's cumulative career to gauge how often he was striking out per season. So my belief is that Jim Thome's job, because he wasn't a special baseball player, my opinion is that, or my conclusion is that Jim Thome's job was to strike out as much as possible to knock Reggie Jackson off of that place. And I stand by that. So in my book, if you're in the top 20 strikeouts as a batter, you're not a Hall of Famer. Automatic disqualification. It's like for pitchers, my standard is if you pitch less innings than Babe Ruth, automatic disqualification. And I might extend it a little bit, whereas if you didn't have like as many complete games as Babe Ruth, I think that should disqualify you too. You're just compiling statistics. Justin Verlander, Scherzer, they're just compiling statistics. Garrett Cole was definitely on that path when he was with Houston. They're just compiling statistics. They're being paid to compile statistics, and that's it. There's nothing special about them. Let's look at bats, batting average, and hits. So I apologize that these are so tiny. I haven't figured out how to like zoom in and out. I'm not sure if that's even an option, but I'll figure it out. So Pete Rose. As a baseball player, he was pretty outstanding. Again, that's something that I asked my dad about, what he thought of Pete Rose. And he remembers Pete Rose could hit anything and everything. From my understanding, Pete Rose did some weird stuff with a 13-year-old. I'm not sure if that's just a rumor because, again, he's white and he is among the greatest hitters. Or if that's just nonsense spread about him to continue keeping him out of the Hall of Fame, despite the degeneracy that MLB is bringing into the sport. I don't know. And then as a manager, we know that Pete Rose was betting. So it's, I know that it's a super fine line. And obviously if I cross the fine line, other people feel like it's the green light to continue crossing the fine line on shady stuff that they want to advocate for and promote. So I know that I have to be careful in my conclusions. Obviously, I can have my opinion, but I know that I have to be careful in my conclusions because I don't want to be the one that that gives other people the green light to say, wow, such and such, da 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 da, right? So again, for context, we have to look at, from the batting side anyways, at bats. Was this dude compiling or was this dude efficient? Obviously, Babe Ruth was efficient. During Babe Ruth's era, there was no Hall of Fame. Therefore, those guys were not compiling statistics. They were playing to win, which is American culture. So Pete Rose stands at the top with 14,053 at-bats. Could that be compiling? Not necessarily, because then we go over to his hits, 4,256 hits. But also, Pete Rose is a champion, right? But then Pete Rose also played with several Africans. So I would have to dig into Pete Rose's career to see how everything spreads out. Babe Ruth, I showed you, Babe Ruth's career was not engineered. It's perfect. When Babe Ruth's team was the best, they won. No engineering. It's all random. It's perfect. It's perfect. It is as perfect as a career as you're going to get. I mean, Michael Jordan's career wasn't engineered, but his wins were clustered, right? Now, what Michael Jordan did was still obviously super impressive because nobody else has done it. But, and again, Michael Jordan, their front office wasn't on his side, right? I respect what Jordan and his teammates did against Jerry Krause's pet. Obviously, his pet caught the brunt of it, even though it wasn't his fault, but that was Jordan and crew defending their territory. And I wish, obviously not now anymore, but I wish before baseball players would have done the same thing, stand their ground against these front office analytic nerds, but you didn't. So it's just indicative of American culture anyway. So, okay. So here, see, at bats, there's a lot of blue tones, right? That indicates compiling statistics. Ty Cobb managed 11,434 at bats. And then you've got Honus Wagner, who I added just because Honus Wagner was awesome. Ended up with 10,430 at bats. So there are far more. When I dissect the Hall of Fame inductees, the Latino ones, you will see that there was just a lot of engineering going on. You will see that the Latino players, from Vladimir Guerrero Sr. to Vladimir Guerrero Jr., are just engineered narratives by MLB. They weren't special, for sure. They weren't special. I mean, look, where was he? Albert Pujols, Adrian Beltre. Even though I like Adrian Beltre, he was a Dodger. He was a great Dodger. He played through this thumb injury or this finger injury where he used to tape his finger so it wouldn't hurt. So I respect that. I respect that Adrian Beltre gave 100% when he was an LA Dodger. I respect that. But I lost respect for him when there was a claim that he had passed Cap Anson in hits. And if you remember, there is there's no consensus as to how many hits Cap Anson actually got. And so when I realized that Adrian Beltre was just compiling statistics in an attempt to overthrow Cap Anson, all the respect flew out the window. And then here we see anyways, Adrian Beltre ended up with 11,068 at-bats. Cap Anson isn't here. So obviously Adrian Beltre was just compiling statistics. We've got, who else is of interest? Cal Ripken Jr. When I first started watching the Baseball Hating Network, so I had always heard about Cal Ripken's streak. And I mean, I guess that's wonderful to a degree. So Cal Ripken runs a bunch of baseball camps, but Cal Ripken also uses those baseball camps with children as an extension of MLB's science experiments. So do I respect Cal Ripken solely because he had a streak? I'm going to argue that streaks are stupid. Not today, but I'm going to argue that streaks are stupid. We don't remember Joe DiMaggio because he had a streak. We remember Joe DiMaggio because he's a New York Yankee and he's a 9-time World Series champion, and he had pretty solid statistics in that. And he went to war. I mean, okay, given it was Hawaii vacation for those guys, thank God that nothing happened to them. Thank God that they didn't see fire or even friendly fire. Thank God, right? But nonetheless, Cap Anson got gassed by accident. So Christy Mathewson got gassed by accident. He passed away too soon because he developed tuberculosis, which was, I've read that it caused, a lot of baseball players were upset. Christy Mathewson passed away too soon. Thank God that didn't happen to Joe DiMaggio too. So again, most at bats, it's a lot of bluish tones. That indicates that there has been a lot of compiling of statistics post integration. Let's move over and see. I didn't do this on purpose. I was just trying to make everything look pretty. So you've got guys that compiled at bats, and you see that it's mostly bluish tones. Now we go over to batting average, and it's mostly yellow tones. So you see this, right? This is a great visual that shows you that post-integration, mediocrity rose, actual baseball players, MLB wasn't recruited, has never, post-integration, for the sake of the African, MLB has not recruited true American baseball players anymore. So batting average at the top is Ty Cobb. So Ty Cobb is in both of the at-bats and batting average category. That tells you right there that Ty Cobb was not compiling statistics. It tells you also that Ty Cobb was a badass baseball player. Even though he garnered 11,434 at-bats, that could have easily dropped his batting average. It could have easily risen his strikeouts, and it did neither. It did neither. So Ty Cobb ended his career with a batting average of 366, despite him being a player manager, despite accruing 11,434 at-bats. He was bad ass. Ty Cobb. So this attack on Ty Cobb makes more sense, right? It's not just me that realizes how awesome Ty Cobb was. It's also the Jews attacking him, because it is Jews, and then it's the Africans like mediocre Curtis Granderson. You're such a, I mean, come on, man. Come on, right? You understand what I'm saying. So Babe Ruth is in the top 20 in the batting average, 342. And obviously in the batting average, it gets dicey when there are guys who only had 4,280 at-bats. So obviously, but I mean, this guy's not in the Hall of Fame anyway. So slow your roll, chill out, take the temperature down, you're going to be fine. That's, again, the at-bats gives context to all of this. So you're going to be okay, dude. You're going to be okay. I definitely have opinions on Tony Gwynn that I'm not going to talk about today, but I don't think he was anything to write home about either. I'm going to talk about Joe Jackson a little bit. I don't want to do it in the middle of the stream because I don't want the main point to get lost. But shoeless Joe Jackson, he finished with 4,000. What is that? Is that a 9 or 4,981 at bats? Batting average 356. Ted Williams 344. But I have opinions on Ted Williams too. Anybody else from that? No. So you see it, right? The at-bats category, the top 20, mostly blue-ish tones. Batting average, mostly golden tones. And I am going to have to plug in over here. I am trying to shorten these, but it's just a lot of great information. So I need to plug in really quick. Apologies. I thought I could make it, but no. Okay. Most hits. So most hits, the good news is that we do have a good mix of bluish and golden tones, right? So we've got Pete Rose. I don't have a problem with Pete Rose. 14,053 hits. Ty Cobb, at bats was 14,053. Hits for Pete Rose, 4,256. Then Ty Cobb, 4,189. Now, if you say that, no, I don't even, I'm not going to go there. I don't have a problem with Pete Rose. My dad kind of remembers Pete Rose, and he's like, yeah, that guy could hit everything. And I checked the stadium. Like, we all know that San Francisco Stadium was built for Barry Bonds to hit home runs, right? I don't think Cincinnati Stadium was built for Pete Rose to hit more hits. I'm sure, if anything, if they were going to favor anybody, it was going to be the Africans, not Pete Rose, right? So I think Pete Rose is legit. Then you've got Hank Aaron, but again, Hank Aaron, 12,364 at bats. Compiler. Hank Aaron is the original compiler. Okay, Derek Jeter, but 11,195 at bats. Honus Wagner, 10,430 at bats, 3,430 hits. Yastrzemski, the patriarch, because he's Mike's grandfather, right? I hope that Carl Yastrzemski was just a baseball player. I don't know if he was like a Jew, like Sandy Koufax and Lou Gehrig, Max Scherzer. I never heard anything about. To this day, I've never heard anything about Carl Yastrzemski in that light, and I hope he's like Michael Jordan in the sense that he was a great American. He's still alive, so as opposed to, I mean, we all know that. I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that the reason why Mike Yastrzemski wanted to play with Gabe Kepler is because they're both Jewish. They were both on the kneeling. They were both on the things have to change in America, even though they have no right to make such demands. So even though the grandson turned out to be that way, I hope that Carl Yastrzemski was just a great American. And I want to respect his baseball career, but I don't know. Paul Molitor. So when I was skimming over the post-integration Hall of Fame inductees, I did find one that was a mess. Beat up his wife, did drugs, cheated on his wife, all sorts of horrendous things. And this is a white dude. Now, why did they vote him in? No American is going to be okay with voting that dude in. Like, why would you do that? And again, if there's truth to Mike Piazza did steroids when he was a New York Met, and I know that Jewish Marvin Miller encouraged the writers to vote Mike Piazza in anyway. So if Miller's strategy was to set the bar for future steroid users, the writers can easily say, we made a mistake there, we're not going to repeat it. But that's not what they're doing at all. Instead, they make excuses like your Susan Slussers, like the dude that's all about Rafael Palmeiro, who looks like he consumes steroids too. And there's this other guy. You're lucky I couldn't find my notes. I have to redo those notes. But had really good notes too. I can't find them. But I'm going to put those together by the end of the week and talk about that. That'll be the finale on steroids, I guess. So, okay, look, hits, good mix between golden tones and blue tones. But you've got some compilers like Albert Pujols, Adrian Beltre, Pine Tar George Brett, Tony Gwynn. Again, I have opinions on Tony Gwynn. And this is, you know, is this a good time to bring this up? So when it comes to John Smoltz, I have several opinions, but most of them lean toward this isn't who I thought he was. I really like that article from Men's Journal that they did on him right before he got inducted into the Hall of Fame. I thought that's who he is, but it turns out that it doesn't seem like it. And so one of my biggest problems with Smoltz is he defines himself as a competitor, but he gives in to these narratives. Like, if I was as tough as a competitor as Smoltz claims to be, I would have murdered this Tony Gwynn narrative. So from my understanding, the reason why Tony Gwynn got inducted into the Hall of Fame is because Smoltz, Glavine, and Maddux never struck him out. Well, if you want to, this is what I was saying yesterday. If you want to tell me that a mediocre MLB player should get into the Hall of Fame because a former mediocre MLB player is already in the Hall of Fame, well, I'm going to show you why the dude in the Hall of Fame shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And if I have to do that with Glavine, Smoltz, and Maddux, I'm 100% prepared to do that. I'm ready to argue that they shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame either. And it's very easy to do that just going off of Babe Ruth's, Christy Mathewson, and Walter Johnson statistics. So it's a fair warning. It's a fair warning. And if I was Smoltz, I would have murdered that narrative about Tony Gwynn a long time ago. I mean, would Tom Brady stand for something like that? Nah, he would not. Apparently, Tom Brady's video from yesterday is still trolling Atlanta for that game where they came back and won 28-3. But again, that shows the difference. Tom Brady defines Hall of Fame, right? Walking, talking, current player, Hall of Fame. He should be in there right now. He can still continue playing, but what I'm saying is whatever you give them in the NFL to the Hall of Famers, he should have it already. He should already have it. Tom Brady would have murdered the Tony Gwynn narrative as soon as he heard about it the first time. And so if MLB Marxists are going to argue that Tony Gwynn is a Hall of Famer because Maddux, Glavine, and Smoltz never struck him out, well, I'm going to argue, well, you know what? Smoltz, Glavine, and Maddux shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame anyway. So pick your battle. Pick your battle. And I'm prepared. So pick your battle. So let's go over to, I showed you guys yesterday this one, which is bleeding on both ends. It's drowning in blood. The most tainted category in MLB is the home run category. The most tainted. And it just defines MLB's culture in such an effort to erase the greatness that came before integration, before MLB. You've got compilers trying to beat the true home run king is Babe Ruth. He did it at a time when they weren't compiling statistics. The man was born to play baseball. Science proves it. So Babe Ruth, 714 home runs. And then you've got Steroids, Barry Bonds with 762. But we all know that Barry Bonds took steroids. I remember when Barry Bonds played with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And when the LA Dodgers used to play against the Pirates, I hated Barry Bonds. He was such a prick. He's the complete opposite of Michael Jordan. You can love Michael Jordan, right? Like, there's something about Michael Jordan that you just, charismatic. There's just something about Michael Jordan that you like. You feel like, even though that's a tough competitor, right? There was something very likable about Michael Jordan. Barry Bonds, I remember Barry Bonds with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He was a scrawny stick, and he had the hugest chip on his shoulder. He was so unlikable. And that was my opinion back then. This is before the steroids. And so, again, you're lucky I can't find my notes because I have a lot of stuff on Barry Bonds. What I did find was this. So this is from ESPN, November 15, 2007. It's probably their archives by now. So Barry Bonds, steroids timeline. And again, I figured out how to put a browser link, but I haven't figured out how to navigate the browser link. So that's like my next step in my self-learning road. But here we go. 1998, boyhood friends Barry Bonds and Greg Anderson reconnect when Anderson is working as a personal trainer in the Bay Area. Shortly after, Bonds hires Anderson to replace Raymond Ferris, who at the time was supervising his workouts. June 1st, 2003. In an article published in Muscle and Fitness magazine, Bonds describes his training regimen as prescribed by the Bay Area Laboratory Cooperative Balco. In this article, Bonds states that in the winter of 2000, Balco founder Victor Conte and Balco began measuring the nutrient levels in the outfielder's blood, then prescribed specific supplemental regimens to correct imbalances. And so that's what happened with from the Brewers, the Jewish guy, the one that stole, thanks to MLB Marxist, Matt Kemp's MVP award, Ryan Braun, right? So there's just a lot. I have to reposition myself on my chair. So there's some professor out there at a college who said that he does not know what steroids does to the body, man. A professor. And then so I'm not digging into people's skeletons. I just look for what I can find on the surface. And usually on some of this stuff, I can find a lot without digging into the surface. I'm not paying for information, and I don't have the time to do some intense digging. But this professor who doesn't know what steroids does to athletes, I looked up, he's a Marxist. He's a fucking Marxist. So of course, he doesn't fucking know what steroids does to the body because he's a Marxist. And Marxists do everything they can to sweep stuff under the rug for like Barry Bonds and other Africans coming down the pipeline, right? That's why MLB legalized the use of smoking pot among MLB players, because there's so many Africans coming through the pipeline, and we all know that Africans engage in drug use and pot smoking. I mean, it's fucking disgusting, but this is where the shit's at, right? This is where the shit is at. And so, unfortunately, I cannot find my awesome steroids notes, but I did find one piece of paper from SF Gate, February 10, 2008. I was trying to figure out when the steroid era started, and I found different things. So during the steroid era, 26 26 players accused of steroid use play for the Yankees. This is Steinbrenner ownership. Cashman was already around. So from around 1995, 1996 through 2008, at least 26 steroid users wore the coveted, the historic, the winning ways, the America's team uniform. Thanks to the Steinbrenner ownership and in part to Cashman, who are all Jewish. All of them are Jewish, okay? So that's why we can't beat around the bush on some of these things. 14 pitchers, 12 position players. Most in MLB. Under Jewish, watch. America's team, the New York Yankees, acquired the most steroid users in MLB. So you cannot be surprised why I don't hold in high regard the Steinbrenners nor Cashman. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be my opinion. Just the fact that the New York Yankees don't win under the Steinbrenner ownership is enough, right? It's enough to rile up New York Yankee fans who were born into a culture of winning, and why the answer to Don LaGreca's why do these Yankees fans expect this? Well, it's culture established by the previous ownerships. That's why. Okay. Clemens used steroids. I'm not sure when. I have to look at his career to see if there's a jump in his numbers, exactly what happened. But Clemens got his steroids from Brian McNamee. Andy Pettit also got his steroids from McNamee. Kevin Brown, who I know also played for the LA Dodgers, got HGH from the Mets Bats Boy. Kirk Radomski. Mike Stanton, Denny Nagel, Jason Gressley also got their juice from Radomski. Ricky Bones bought it in Puerto Rico. They found syringes and steroids in his locker. Ron Villon, another Radomski client. Todd Williams, Radomski, Josias Manzanillo, Radomski, Ite Morris, Glenn Allen Hill, David Justice, Radomski. Is that the Braves? David Justice? Rondell White, Radomski. Matt Loughton failed the steroid test. Gary Sheffield, Balco. Randy Velarde, Balco. Jason Giambi, Balco Anderson. And then, there's a bunch of nobodies, right? A bunch of nobodies. Bobby Estella, Balco from Greg Anderson, Bond's trainer. So this information is out there. It's just that people don't take the time to research it. And I understand the bulk of the population falls into the flock. And then on either end, you've got good and bad shepherds. Unfortunately, a good shepherd could always become a bad shepherd. I don't anticipate that happening to me. I've already made several choices in my life that I could have earned serious amounts of cash, but I turned it down. And I live with the consequences of my choices, but my conscience is clear for that reason. And we need to figure out how to help people earn a living wage and just live. It's going to be a challenge because we don't want to tell people what to do either. It's just, there's a lot in there, right? And so we have to figure out how to get this stuff done. So I've realized a lot of things. I continually realize a lot of things. And the proponents of Barry Bonds for Hall of Fame are Marxists and Jews. Trevor Bauer is a Barry Bonds proponent, and now we know a lot more about Trevor Bauer. I'm going to bring this up now, but I'm going to bring it up again because I don't want some of these things to get lost in the middle of the stream. Okay, so the LA Dodgers are no longer the LA Dodgers. They're the Tampa Dodgers, right? They are run by Jews, Andrew Friedman, Stan Kasten, HIV Magic Johnson, who's an African, and then Mark Walter. I don't know if he's Jewish, but he's all in on the BLM propaganda, right? All in on all that stuff, right? So he's obviously, if he's not Jewish, he's a Marxist. So with Trevor Bauer, I heard the hype about, oh, he has a female agent. And so when the Trevor Bauer stuff came out, I thought, okay, he's got a female agent. She's obviously a feminist, but she's standing for this stuff. And so I would have liked to have seen your Molly Knights hold her feet to the fire, given that they're all feminists and all that stuff, right? And okay, so I tweeted that out, and then so I know that when I tweet some stuff out, the algorithm returns me pertinent stuff, which I know we're anti-algorithms, but in that case it helps me with my research and stuff like that, and it helps me find out what's going on without me digging for stuff. And so it turns out that the hype surrounding Trevor Bauer's female agent, because she's the one you see in the photos, she's the face of that. She's not Trevor Bauer's sole agent. She's co-agent. How fucking ridiculous is all that? I mean, the stupidity of it. I mean, talk about faking it till you make it, man. That is the ultimate fake it till you make it. Trevor Bauer has co-agents. So she's not there wheeling and dealing. She's not there doing it on her own, blazing a trail for other women. She's co-agent. Oh man, when I found that out, I saved it. I didn't react to it. I saved it, and I'm going to bring it up again later on. But man, that's fucking stupid, right? That is stupid. Now, the other thing about her, she's Jewish. She's Jewish. So she is a proponent of Barry Bonds. Why? Because she's Jewish. I mean, connecting the dots in this manner is fucking insane. I cannot hold back my reactions, because when I first found out these things, blowing the mind. Wow. So, who advocates for steroids, Barry Bonds? Jews and Marxists. Fair-minded Americans don't do this stuff. Maybe like your Bernie bros probably advocate for Barry Bonds, but they're basically like borderline Marxist anyway, so that covers them, right? That covers them. Okay, so let's get back to the most tainted MLB record, the home runs. And what is it exactly about the home run record? What was happening? It was MLB's effort to overthrow, obviously, Babe Ruth with compiler Hank Aaron, and then steroids, Barry Bonds, did his thing. Alex Rodriguez, why did he do what he did? Well, he was doing steroids. Confessed to it. He's also, to this day, the highest paid MLB player. And I do want to point out, I'm going very long. I did not intend to go this long, but such is life. So some of the stuff that I had saved for today, I'm going to push it over to tomorrow. Culture, not just post-integration culture, but culture like Barry Bonds took steroids, he's African. Alex Rodriguez took steroids, Dominican. Sammy Sosa. Mark McGwire's white. Rafael Palmeiro, I have him as Cuban. And so on. So, so culture, it's not just post-integration culture, it's imported culture. From my understanding, I haven't heard anything from the MLB Marxist media. Steroids are still legal in the Dominican Republic. So your best bet is to anticipate that there are still Dominicans taking the steroids. Let me talk about RBIs really quick. It's not bleeding as much as the home run record, but it's bleeding, right? You've got your steroid users, you got your compilers. Babe Ruth, though, look at that. 2,213 RBIs in 8,399 at-bats. Babe Ruth is it, man. He's the king. And then he's followed by a bunch of steroid users and compilers. Ty Cobb is in there, 1,937. What's interesting is just Ty Cobb may have had more hits, but Babe Ruth drove in more RBIs, or more runs. It's I don't know. I hope Ty Cobb made peace with whatever he felt about Babe Ruth. Given that, look, Babe Ruth was born to play. Science proved it. So, for me, I see them as equals. Each one brought their own thing to the game. And, you know, it is what it is, right? So, that's what I've got today. I have more, but I want to save it. I did not want to go this long. I'm trying to keep it at an hour, but I think the pitching stuff is going to go long too. So for sure, the rest of the week, I'm just covering top 20 in the statistics that matter. And so... is there anything going on today? I don't think so. So hopefully you guys have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. I will be back as close to 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time as possible. It's just, some of this stuff is tough to take. In the sense that that's why you don't meet your heroes. I'm not saying that MLB players are my heroes, but they're other people's heroes. And but that just shows why you cannot hold man in that regard. Man is corruptible. Power corrupts completely. That's why we worship or hold God in high praise, right? Because God is perfect. And so, did I want to remain in ignorant bliss? I mean, the game should have never gotten this out of hand, or this degenerate, or this much cheating, or this much compiling. It should have never got to this point anyway. But okay, right, here we are. We can do something about it. We'll all figure it out together somehow, separate but together. I think it can work. So I will see you guys tomorrow as close to 8 a.m. as possible. I'll be continuing the top 20 batting stuff. I'm going to do my best to put my steroids notes back together, or try to figure out where I could have possibly left them. I've got stacks and stacks of stuff, and I will continue on that. We'll go from there. So hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. See you tomorrow. Thank you very much.